the 170-year-old wood hardener that costs almost nothing and outlasts every modern product on the shelf, the secret hiding in plain sight. Here is something that should make every builder, homesteader, and weekend prepper genuinely angry. There is a wood treatment so effective, so cheap, and so permanent that a single application in the 1860s produced floors that are still being tested today. And passing. It costs about 3 cents per square foot. It requires no trip to the hardware store. You mix it in a bucket. And for over a century, it quietly vanished from shelves, not because it stopped working, but because something that works forever cannot be sold twice. That treatment is sodium silicate. You probably know it as water glass, and the reason you are buying Minwax instead of using it has nothing to do with chemistry. The story begins in 1825, in a modest laboratory in Munich. A chemist placed a fragment of quartz into a beaker of caustic potash. What came out was not regular glass. It was a clear, viscous liquid, alkaline, syrupy, and unlike anything recorded in the scientific literature at the time. He named it Wasserglas, water glass. He published his findings in the leading German scientific journal of the age under the title Über das Wasserglas, which, roughly translates to on water glass. His laboratory notes, still preserved in Munich's archives, show a scientist who immediately recognized what he had. He recorded that wood treated with this solution became harder, more resistant to decay, and far less vulnerable to fire. A single observation, written in ink on aging paper, would take another century to be fully understood, and then quietly forgotten. But here is what history books tend to leave out. The idea behind water glass was not entirely new. In the 1500s, a metallurgist named Georg Agricola described methods for fusing sand with alkali. His treatises, written for miners, outlined recipes that would echo in laboratory notes 3 centuries later. A century after Agricola, another experimenter recorded his own work with a fusion of soda and silica that produced a soluble glassy mass. These early alchemists were circling the same discovery, hinting at a material that could dissolve in water, travel into a surface, and return as a solid, binding and preserving whatever it touched. By the time the Munich chemist formalized the recipe in 1825, "Sju Borsamberter anpai dist Salmerfortariger Bangrorau." Modern groundwork had already been laid in the margins of alchemical manuscripts. The leap from curiosity to utility was simply waiting for someone to measure it, publish it, and share it. Most wood treatments work on the surface. Water glass does not. This distinction is not a sales pitch. It is observable chemistry, and the science behind it is worth understanding because it explains why the old-timers trusted it with their floors, their barns, and their theater sets. When you brush a sodium silicate solution onto pine, something called capillary action takes over. The liquid is drawn into the cellular structure of the wood, into the cell walls, the lumens, the tiny hollow tubes that once carried water through the living tree. As the water evaporates, carbon dioxide from the surrounding air reacts with the alkaline solution. That reaction triggers the formation of a silica gel. The gel solidifies inside the wood, binding itself to cellulose and lignin, and leaves behind an invisible mineral scaffold. Scanning electron micrographs have captured this transformation in extraordinary detail. Where untreated pine appears as a honeycomb of empty cavities and open pores, silicate-treated samples reveal a thin, continuous layer of amorphous silica lining every surface inside the wood. Some deposits bridge the smallest structural fibers within the cell wall itself. Transmission electron microscopy has confirmed the presence of silica nanospheres embedded deep in the wood's interior layers. This is not a surface coating. The penetration depth, measured at up to 3 mm in southern yellow pine, means the treatment reinforces the working layer, the zone where real wear and impact actually occur. Set an untreated pine board next to a silicate-treated board, and drag a steel stylus across both. The untreated wood yields immediately, leaving a deep, ragged groove. On the treated board, the same tool barely marks the surface. The difference is not just visible, it is tactile. A pine board that can be dented with a thumbnail reaches a surface hardness between 900 and 1,100 pounds force after a single sodium silicate treatment. Untreated pine averages around 380 pounds force on the same scale. These numbers were not assembled by a marketing team. The Forest Products Laboratory published a technical report in 1997 that measured southern yellow pine before and after silicate impregnation using a standardized wood testing protocol. Fire testing follows the same pattern. In controlled burns, pine panels treated with water glass showed a 60% reduction in flame spread compared to untreated panels. The silica network formed by the treatment acts as a heat shield, insulating the underlying fibers from combustion. Decay resistance holds the same standard. A 2012 study published in the Journal of Wood Science exposed pine blocks to brown rot fungus under warm, moist conditions for 12 weeks. Untreated controls lost nearly 30% of their mass, while silicate-treated samples lost less than 1%. Their cell walls, remained lined with a thin mineral armor, largely unchanged. Hardness, fire resistance, and decay resistance, three of the oldest threats to wood, answered by a solution first poured from a 19th-century beaker. By 1845, the recipe appeared in agricultural almanacs wedged between instructions for making soap and preserving apples. 1 pound of sodium silicate dissolved in 10 gallons of water. Farmers used it to seal eggs for winter storage. They mopped it onto kitchen floors, waited for the boards to cure, and found they rang underfoot with a new stony hardness that resisted mud, boots, and spring damp. Theater managers had their own reasons for paying attention. After a catastrophic fire at a prominent opera house in 1844, painted backdrops and wooden stage sets became a liability no manager could ignore. The most quietly remarkable evidence comes from Vermont. A farmhouse floor laid in 1861 was subjected to a conservation assessment in 2008. More than a century after its boards were treated, the surface still resisted wear. Hardness tests averaged a 55% increase over the original untreated wood. The original owner's journal entry from June 12, 1861 survives. The foreman said the new glass water solution would harden within a week and protect the timber from the damp spring. That floor now stands in a living history museum, a quiet rebuke to the idea that old methods fade because they fail. By the early 20th century, sodium silicate had scaled far beyond the farmhouse kitchen. A major Philadelphia chemical company, founded in 1865, had emerged as the nation's primary producer, shipping thousands of tons annually by 1920. The reach extended into wartime logistics. In 1918, the United States Army Ordnance Department issued a formal circular specifying that every ammunition crate shipped to the front had to be coated inside with a 5% sodium silicate solution. This was not a fringe product. It was backbone infrastructure, trusted by military engineers and corporate buyers across an entire continent. The pivot did not happen overnight. It happened in the pages of post-war magazines, in advertisements full of gleaming kitchen tables and polished living rooms bathed in amber light. New wood finishing brands began filling hardware aisles with a different kind of promise. Their slogans offered not permanence, but transformation by the quart. Brings out the beauty in wood. Rich color, lasting protection, easy to apply, easy to love. The message was clear. Wood was not something to be made harder. It was something to be made handsome, and above all, updatable. The math that should infuriate you: a gallon of 40% sodium silicate water glass costs about $25. Diluted to working strength for wood treatment, that single bucket covers roughly 800 square feet. The math works out to about 3 cents per square foot. One application. Permanent penetration. no return visit required. A quart of a leading brand polyurethane or wood hardener, priced between $12 and $18, covers far less. The cost per square foot rises above 10 cents, and each new seasonal coat or periodic touch-up means another trip to the store. None of this means sodium silicate is perfect. The material safety data sheets are honest about its limitations. Concentrated sodium silicate is strongly alkaline, with a pH between 11 and 13. It irritates skin and eyes. Gloves and goggles are not optional. It can etch glass, corrode aluminum, and leave white streaks on stone or tile if handled carelessly. And once the silica sets inside the wood, it does not flex with the seasons. Treated boards exposed to repeated cycles of wetting and drying can develop surface brittleness or shallow cracks. For retailers, the calculation is straightforward. A product that costs pennies per square foot, requires protective gear, and rarely needs reapplication is not a recipe for repeat business. Water glass is a bulk commodity with no scent, no sheen, and no built-in obsolescence. The business model around it simply does not support a finishing products aisle.